The human respiratory system is a marvel, exchanging oxygen and carbon dioxide to sustain life. Through intricately connected organs, it supplies vital oxygen and removes waste, supporting every cell. Even brief failure can be fatal, highlighting its critical role. Understanding this system is essential for diagnosing and treating respiratory diseases. The respiratory system is divided into the conducting and respiratory zones. Air enters through the nasal cavity, passes the pharynx and larynx, then travels down the trachea. The trachea branches into bronchi and bronchioles, forming a tree-like structure. Bronchioles end in alveoli, tiny air sacs where gas exchange occurs. The lungs, protected by the rib cage, rely on the diaphragm and intercostal muscles for breathing. Breathing, also known as pulmonary ventilation, is the process of moving air into and out of the lungs. This cyclical process is driven by pressure changes within the thoracic cavity, created by the coordinated action of the diaphragm and intercostal muscles. Inhalation, or inspiration, is an active process that begins with the contraction of the diaphragm. As the diaphragm contracts, it flattens, increasing the volume of the thoracic cavity. Simultaneously, the external intercostal muscles contract, lifting the ribs upward and outward, further expanding the chest cavity. This expansion decreases the pressure within the lungs, creating a pressure gradient that draws air in from the atmosphere. Exhalation, or expiration, is typically a passive process. As the diaphragm and external intercostal muscles relax, the thoracic cavity decreases in volume. The lungs, being elastic, recoil to their resting state, increasing the pressure within the alveoli. This higher pressure forces air out of the lungs. During forceful exhalation, such as during exercise or coughing, the internal intercostal muscles and abdominal muscles contract, further decreasing the volume of the thoracic cavity and expelling air more forcefully. This pressure-driven mechanism of breathing is known as negative pressure breathing. By changing the volume of the thoracic cavity, we create pressure gradients that drive the flow of air into and out of the lungs. The primary function of the respiratory system is to facilitate the exchange of gases between the air in the alveoli and the blood in the pulmonary capillaries. This exchange occurs across the thin respiratory membrane, which separates the air-filled alveoli from the blood-filled capillaries. Oxygen, present in higher concentration in the inhaled air, diffuses across the respiratory membrane and into the pulmonary capillaries, where it binds to hemoglobin in red blood cells for transport to the body's tissues. This movement of gas occurs due to the partial pressure difference, with oxygen's partial pressure being higher in the alveoli than in the deoxygenated blood arriving at the lungs. Conversely, carbon dioxide, a waste product of cellular metabolism, exists in higher concentration in the deoxygenated blood entering the lungs. It diffuses across the respiratory membrane into the alveoli, where it is subsequently exhaled. Again, this movement occurs due to the partial pressure gradient, with carbon dioxide's partial pressure being higher in the deoxygenated blood compared to the air within the alveoli. This efficient exchange of gases is crucial for maintaining the body's acid-base balance. As carbon dioxide dissolves in the blood, it forms carbonic acid, which can alter blood pH. However, an enzyme within red blood cells, carbonic anhydrase, helps convert carbonic acid into bicarbonate ions and hydrogen ions. This buffering system helps to regulate blood pH, preventing drastic changes. Once oxygen diffuses across the respiratory membrane into the pulmonary capillaries, it binds to hemoglobin, a protein found in red blood cells. Hemoglobin, with its 4 iron-containing heme groups, has a high affinity for oxygen. This binding is reversible, allowing hemoglobin to release oxygen to the tissues where it is needed for cellular respiration. Carbon dioxide, produced by cells as a byproduct of metabolism, is transported in the blood back to the lungs for elimination. It is transported in 3 main forms: dissolved in plasma, bound to hemoglobin, and as bicarbonate ions. The majority of carbon dioxide is transported as bicarbonate ions, or HCO3- in the plasma. This conversion from carbon dioxide to bicarbonate is facilitated by the enzyme carbonic anhydrase within red blood cells. In the lungs, the reaction reverses, converting bicarbonate back to carbon dioxide, which is then exhaled. The efficient transport of oxygen and removal of carbon dioxide by the circulatory system, in conjunction with the gas exchange in the lungs, ensures that cells receive a constant supply of oxygen and that metabolic waste products are effectively removed from the body. Cellular respiration, a fundamental process occurring within the mitochondria of cells, is essential for life. It's the process by which cells convert glucose, which is derived from the food we eat, into adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, the primary energy currency of cells. Oxygen supplied by the respiratory system plays a critical role in cellular respiration. It acts as the final electron acceptor in the electron transport chain, which is a series of protein complexes located within the inner mitochondrial membrane. This electron transfer process generates a proton gradient across the membrane, which is then used to drive ATP synthesis. Without a constant supply of oxygen, cellular respiration would cease and cells would be unable to generate the energy required for their survival and function. This really highlights the critical link between the respiratory system and cellular energy production. The carbon dioxide produced as a waste product of cellular respiration is then transported by the blood back to the lungs, where it is exhaled, completing the respiratory cycle. This intricate interplay between the respiratory and circulatory systems ensures a continuous supply of oxygen for energy production and the efficient removal of metabolic waste products. While breathing can be consciously controlled to some extent, it's primarily an autonomic process regulated by the brainstem, specifically the medulla oblongata and pons. These respiratory centers in the brainstem receive input from various chemoreceptors which monitor the levels of oxygen, carbon dioxide, and pH in the blood. Chemoreceptors located in the carotid bodies and aortic arch are highly sensitive to changes in blood carbon dioxide levels. An increase in carbon dioxide and thus carbonic acid leads to a decrease in blood pH, signaling a more acidic environment. This change is detected by chemoreceptors, which then send signals to the respiratory centers in the brainstem, increasing the rate and depth of breathing. This increased ventilation helps to expel excess carbon dioxide from the body, restoring blood pH to its normal range. Conversely, a decrease in carbon dioxide levels or an increase in blood pH will decrease the rate and depth of breathing. While oxygen levels also influence breathing rate, carbon dioxide is actually the primary regulator under normal physiological conditions. This control mechanism ensures that breathing rate and depth are precisely matched to the body's metabolic demands, maintaining optimal levels of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the blood. To assess respiratory functions, several volumes and capacities are measured using a technique called spirometry. These measurements provide valuable information about lung health and can aid in diagnosing respiratory disorders. Tidal volume, or TV, is the volume of air inhaled or exhaled during a normal breath at rest. Vital capacity, or VC, represents the maximum volume of air that can be forcefully exhaled after a maximum inhalation. Residual volume, or RV, is the volume of air remaining in the lungs after a maximal exhalation, preventing the lungs from collapsing. Respiratory rate, another important clinical parameter, refers to the number of breaths taken per minute. Hypoxia, which is a condition characterized by inadequate oxygen delivery to the body's tissues, can be caused by a variety of factors, including respiratory diseases, altitude sickness, and carbon monoxide poisoning. Understanding these respiratory volumes, capacities, and terms is crucial for interpreting pulmonary function tests and assessing the severity of respiratory conditions. Hypoxia, a condition of insufficient oxygen supply to the body's tissues, can manifest in various ways and have serious consequences. Recognizing the signs and symptoms of hypoxia is crucial for prompt diagnosis and intervention. Individuals experiencing hypoxia may exhibit cyanosis, which is a bluish discoloration of the skin and mucous membranes, indicating inadequate oxygen saturation in the blood. Shortness of breath, increased respiratory rate, and confusion are also common symptoms. Causes of hypoxia are diverse, ranging from respiratory diseases like pneumonia and COPD to conditions affecting oxygen uptake, such as carbon monoxide poisoning. Altitude sickness, which is characterized by a decrease in atmospheric pressure and therefore available oxygen, can also lead to hypoxia. Treatment for hypoxia focuses on addressing the underlying cause and restoring adequate oxygen levels. This may involve supplemental oxygen therapy, medications to open airways, or mechanical ventilation in severe cases. Understanding the causes, symptoms, and management of hypoxia is paramount for medical professionals to provide timely and effective care for patients experiencing this potentially life-threatening condition.